Thank you so much. It's my great privilege on behalf of Estonian Research Council and as a previous Vice Director of this university to welcome heartily you here in Tartu on this nice event. It is also very special, as Simon mentioned, that once upon a time I belonged to the team of this university, and that's why I am following with a great interest what's happening at this university, and I'm so happy that this kind of conferences are taking place in this hall and in Tartu, since it's a quality mark to the Estonian University of Life Sciences, since to attract partners from different countries, it shows that we have something to show you and we have something to be part of. International science cooperation is very important especially for researchers all over the world, but especially for researchers from very small countries, because we don't have the resources enough to cover all the fields and to discuss it with our domestic colleagues. That's why we have to work together with our international peers. In fact, more than a half, approximately 60% of high-quality papers of Estonian researchers are published in cooperation with some foreign colleagues. And international cooperation is also one of the 4 pillars of Estonian research and development strategy, called the third volume of our strategy, which is a master plan of Estonian research policy. Also, Estonian Research Council is responsible for promoting and for helping our scientists in international research cooperation. Our biggest department, where the biggest number of people, is Department for International Scientific, hosts almost all the contact points what we have in Estonia, but one, and we also have dedicated funds for international cooperation. That is not a very big part of our budget, only approximately 2%, but with this we support this kind of initiatives like Aeronet networks. Coming to the program HERA, Estonia has been the partner of this program since its beginning, and we have been successful. Our scientists have been successful only in 2 cases, and this project Modscapes is one of the 2. It could be for not very well informed people, it could be a sign of a very small participation, but actually if we take into account the extremely high competitiveness of HERA projects, it's only, in some calls it was below 10%. I think I've heard that even 3% of the project proposals were successful. In that regard, we've been quite successful, and it shows that our researchers in humanities are on par with colleagues from other European countries, and that is very nice to hear for the people involved in research policy. The topic of this conference and the network contains 2 words, modern and rural, and that seems to a naked eye or the layman from the street. If you ask what connotations have you with the word rural, then usually I think the people think about something old-fashioned, cows, perhaps slavery work, hard work in the fields or in the forest. But in reality, this kind of situations where you have the controversy, where you have the gradient, when you have the intrigue, these situations show that there is something happening. And when something happens, it's very important to do research, to learn what is happening. And it's not only interesting to the scientists per se, but also it's very important to explain to the society what is actually happening. And that's why I think that it is very interesting that you have put together this team and this conference. And I also think that Estonia is a perfect place to study and to follow this dilemma or this conflict on the spot. About 20 years ago, there was a very well-known Estonian writer, Tõnu Õnnepalu, who wrote a small essay. I was unable to find it, but I know it almost by heart. It was extremely intriguing one. It was called Estonia as a country of ruins. And the main message of that was that in Estonia 20 years ago, there were quite many locations where you could see from one single point, looking around, 3 stages of ruins from the different political systems which originated, which were less than 100 years old. The first ruins were coming from the manor houses, manors of the basically German Baltic landlords. When they were neglected they lost the footage due to the land reform in the beginning of the Estonian Republic, the new type of land use was happening, and it was based on the farms. But after 30 years, these farms, after the next political collapse, these farms lost their footage again, and the collective farms were found. And then, after one generation, the collective farms were neglected, and you could see all these 3 stages during 1 century. It means one reform, one major political change during 1 single century. Each generation had its own land reform and its own collapse. And if you add to that the change in the technological basis of land use and also the technological change in the cities, you could realize what has happened to this to the population of this small tiny spot on the earth. So that I think that, and this kind of things happened, of course, everywhere else, but perhaps that clearly, to see 3 stages of ruins at the same spot at the same time, it is quite unique to see. And you can see these changes from the aerial photographs and on the maps as well. So, but enough for me. I think that you have much more interesting things to say. I wish you a nice and fruitful conference and a nice day in Estonia these days when we have extremely long days. Enjoy the Arctic summer. Thank you.